Hi, this is Joe Shannon. I'm a lawyer, a husband, a father of 6 kids, and I also host a podcast called Opening Statement with Joe Shannon. Please consider listening to our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, and any other folks that host podcasts. Just Google Joe Shannon and podcast, and you'll find it. I hope you enjoyed the show. Today we're speaking with Anthony Johnson, a lawyer and marketing guru out of Little Rock, Arkansas. How are you doing today, Anthony?
Doing well. A little gloomy and rainy out, but can't complain.
Little Rock gets a little rain, does it?
Yeah, you know what's funny? I've lived here for 20 years now, and I've always said like we have like one great day of weather in Little Rock a year, and the rest of it, it's terrible. It's either hot or humid. But then when you're forced to stay at home, I was like, we have a lot of beautiful weather. Like it's been really nice over the spring. I guess I'm just working nonstop, so I don't notice it.
That's great.
Pretty incredible.
So just as a way of introduction to folks who are listening, Anthony is a real interesting cat. I've always liked talking to him. He's a lawyer, but he's also a fellow that's on the cutting edge of internet marketing and figuring out ways to better serve clients and to make sure that they're put in the right hands, and is just got a really full life for a 37-year-old young man. Why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about your upbringing, Anthony?
About my upbringing? Yeah, I was a military brat. So I was born in Korea, had a little stint in Texas, Japan, spent a summer abroad in Europe, but so kind of all over the world, and just came from a normal kind of blue collar family. My dad was enlisted Army. My mom was immigrant. She kind of didn't speak very good English, and so she worked at like cafeterias or daycares or stuff like that. So just kind of a normal military brat kind of upbringing.
So where'd you go to grade school and high school? What state?
Grade school, I was in Japan until 6th grade, and then in 7th grade is when I came to Arkansas. So it was right when Forrest Gump was coming out. I remember when my dad was getting his location for where he was getting stationed next after being 6 years in Japan, and I was like, oh, come on, California, Florida, something like that. And I heard Arkansas. I was like, oh, it's like Forrest Gump. I was like, that's where I'm going. Anyways, it was disheartening, but it's a great state. It's good. It's nice. A lot of nature. It's good for me because I'm very distractible when it comes to entertainment and fun. I get FOMO pretty bad, and so it's not much to miss out on. So it's good to concentrate and get some rest time. So
tell us a little bit about. You're kind of an uber successful guy. You got a great, family. It's a great job. Tell me what it was like, junior high and high school. Were you like number one in your class? Were you like the jock? Who were you in high school?
Yeah, I was kind of an overachiever. I think I was second in my class. I think I ended up tying a girl, and they didn't really like me much because I skipped a lot. And I wasn't good. I realized that now that I was very anti-establishment. So I would try to be the best at school while not doing it properly. So I'd skip class, I would not do homework, but I still was competitive, so I'd want to win. So I'd go and ace the tests and do that kind of stuff. But I was quarterback in high school, played baseball, soccer, track, everything else. So was also on the chess team, quiz bowl team, all state. So I did about everything.
So you were quarterback of the football team, but also on the chess team?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not many guys doing that stuff.
Yeah.
That's great. So you're in high school. So what do you credit that competitiveness to? Was it your mom, your dad, your grandparents? What do you think?
Yeah, our whole family has got that is real competitive family. I don't know. Maybe it was because I was moving around when I was younger a lot, and so to make friends, I would always play sports, and so just kind of to me inherent with relationships and friendships were kind of that competition, landscape. And so um, either that, or I was also like kind of the smallest guy when I was younger too. So my dad is 6'5", I'm 6'2", so I'm the shortest guy in my dad and my family at 6'2", and so and I was like 4'11" until I think it was 8th grade, and then in between 8th and 9th grade, I shot up 11 inches, and so all the way up until then, I was the smallest kid ever, and so I always had something to prove.
Yeah, yeah. And so, is sports still a part of your life?
Yeah, I played recreational sports for a long time. Now just kind of every once in a while. I just don't really have time for it. But I probably played soccer up until a couple of years ago. But now I don't really play that much except for just fun with the family.
Yeah. Is it so right now? Is your competitive landscape your business?
Yeah, I kind of compete in everything. Like it can be like throwing a piece of garbage in the trash can. It doesn't
Yeah. Right.
really matter day to day. I think it's just in my core nature. But no, I definitely approach business that way. I mean, it's kind of funny. The more I kind of read about big companies and guys that led companies before, they all think about like being the best, or like they talk about I want to be the best in whatever. But it's like, what are the rules? Like, how do you actually be the best at
Right.
lawyering? Or whatever it is. There's not really a best, but it's that mindset is still pretty prevalent. It's pretty
Sure.
interesting.
What were some of your first jobs that you had as a kid, either in Japan or when you got stateside?
So it's funny. My first job was a paper boy. I don't know if you've heard Morgan's analogy about paper boys, but
I was one too, buddy. 150
yeah,
papers.
yeah. He talks about you're either a paper boy or is kind of the guys that wanted it, that personality. And so I was like taking it a step further. My first job was actually another guy's paper route, and I wasn't old enough to get it yet, and so I actually like subcontracted from him, and I would go do his paper route and charge him for it. So I was always a little early achiever. But then ironically, all through high school, I had probably 20 different jobs, and I'm pretty sure I was fired from every one of them. And mostly it was because I either showed up late or I wanted to do things in a different way, and like they didn't appreciate it at all.
Yeah.
So we'd get into it and then I'd get fired. So that was
So
a
not a
terrible
real
employee.
rule follower, huh, Anthony?
No, not really.
So do you think that's a good trait for an entrepreneur?
I think so. I like the analogy. I was reading a book. They call them heretics, and they said there's kind of the people associate that with kind of these rebels or things, or whatever. But I do think even within a company, an entrepreneur, or within like the team members you have, having this slight notion of irreverence for how it is necessary for you to innovate or to do something differently.
Right. Well, we haven't got there yet, but tell us. So you're number 2 in your class. Who gets to be the college for Anthony Johnson?
So, like I said, I was the first guy in my family to go to college. My dad was enlisted. Mom didn't make much money, so it wasn't like I had any money. So it was one of those things where my parents were like, we saved like $5,000 for college, and you either get a scholarship or you're on your own. And so when I got out, I was in that Duke program, and I think I got like 60% to Duke, and then I got a full ride to University of Arkansas, which is a D1 school here. And then I was going to get like paid like 20 or 30 grand to go to Little Rock, which is kind of a crappier school. And so, now that I know more about sales, it's interesting. It's one of those ABC scenarios. Like I had this A that would have cost a lot, B that was the middle ground, and everyone always picks B. So I was like, I hate being part of the cookie cutter norm, but I went with B just because I couldn't afford to go to Duke. Short term, I've probably had some regrets about not going to a bigger school once I understood like the alumni and kind of the advantages you get there, but it all works out. So
Sure. And then law school, where'd you go?
so law school was funny. I was a computer engineer undergrad, and my last class, like I told you before, I was a little anti-establishment. So I picked computer engineering because they said I only had to go to tests and I could pass. And so I was like, oh, sweet. So I got to school 2 times a semester, and that's all I got to do. And they're like, yeah. And so I was like, okay, I like computers. My dad was, a systems engineer for Cisco at that time. He got that job like my senior year of high school. And so I picked it because of that. And then it almost came back and bite me my last semester because I had this class. It was like virtual hardware dynamic circuits or some crap I was never going to use. And I played guitar in Dixon Street, and then I ended up getting drunk and missed my test. And so I got an F because it's two grades, And so I go in there and I told the guy, I'm like, listen, I'm a little hungover and my best excuse I have. And it's, I was like, I'm not going to be a computer engineer. I'm going to be a lawyer. And so he goes, show me your LSAT and I'll give you a B-. I was like, sweet. So I ran off, took my LSAT, ran back. And that's, I'm good. I've always been a good test taker. So I got 99 percentile in the LSAT. And then I thought about going to law school right away, and I decided, nah, I'm not gonna be a lawyer. And then a couple of years in, I was doing some money management. I had a Series 7 is kind of the track I went on. And I thought it would be good to get a law degree before my LSAT ran out. And so I just applied here locally, a little law school in Little Rock, went to night school. They gave me a full ride. So that's how I ended up being a lawyer.
That's great. And so, yeah. So what was when you were in college, you were studying engineering, but you say you only had to go to school twice. What did you do the rest of the time?
Yeah. College experience. I learned how to play guitar from my roommate, was a jazz sax player, and he taught me how to play guitar with his sax. And so I ended up joining a band when I was 18, and we probably played on Dixon Street 4 or 5 nights a week. So, and then I had my roommate. So my deal was I had a full ride scholarship. I started playing guitar, so I started making enough money that I had my own apartment as well as the dorm. And so I made good friends with the guy that was a very straight-laced guy. I knew him kind of from governor school and high school. And I said, hey, all right, I will room with you every year, and you will have your own room. I'll barely be there. And the only deal is I get to take your schedule that I take. I'll take the same schedule, and you tell me about the test and let me study with you. And so I would literally just not do anything. And he had his own room. I had my place off campus, and he would call me the night before the test and be like, hey, we got a test tomorrow, and whatever, database programming or object-oriented programming or something like that. And so I would come off Dixon Street and go study with him all night.
So did you
my way through college?
And do you have the same experience in law school? Did you actually go to the classes in law school, or did you just go to the tests?
Yeah, so law school makes you go. They really are big on attendance in law school, which I hated. And so I would sit in the back and I would max out my absences because I was trying to do a tech startup at the time and all this other stuff,
Hold on a second. What were you trying to do at the time?
I was trying to so at that time I was in law school going night. I was doing money management in the daytime. And then I met a guy that was also in law school and a computer science guy. And so we started building web applications for companies. We ran the governor's systems administration for his campaign. We did just anything in the technology field as a side company. And then together we decided we were going to try to raise money and build a startup company. So we basically were trying to build an eBay for services at the time. And so we were working on that.
Did that experience help you doing what you're doing right now?
Yeah, that was probably one of 100 failed experiences that probably helped me what I'm doing right now. It was interesting because it did help because we got into the money world. We got into talking to some of the how venture capital and how finance guys look at companies, and realizing how hard it is to convince somebody to give you millions of dollars. I mean, that's it's a lot harder than it sounds when you hear about it.
Especially when you're in Little Rock, Arkansas, right?
Yeah, tech capital of the world.
Well, is it your hope to make it a little bit of a tech capital?
I think it's interesting. So I think the whole world is becoming less and less dependent on geographical borders for anything. And so I think these hubs and that used to be dependent on city centers like Austin and LA, I think they're kind of getting dispersed a little bit because of communities now happen online. They're happen virtually. I mean, we can Zoom, everyone, the idea of a tribe and a movement and community, I just think is going to be less dependent on location. So I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of more rural or grassroots type companies and teams that do things.
You mentioned Morgan and the paper route and entrepreneurs, and another, I interview a lot of entrepreneurs, and one of the things you just hit on was the hundreds of failures that went with making a success. And you think about Edison, and what he did, and he basically thousands of failures, and every failure he said got me closer to the actual solution. So tell me about some of your successes. What actually worked after a number of failures?
Yeah, so successes. I would say the first money-making company was probably that IT company we had in law school. Well, no. First, back it up. The first money-making company, I always forget about this, was in college. I started seeing these girls wearing these designer jeans. I didn't know what they were. It's right when like Citizens and True Religions and all those were getting real hot. And so they were asking girls, of course, just because you ask them anything in college, just to get them to talk to you. And so they're like, yeah, they're paying $150, $200 a pair of jeans. I was like, that's insane. And so I ended up calling this boutique, and she told me who her supplier was. And I started getting up the chain. I found this guy in New York that said he bought last year's inventory because it was like not on brand to continue to sell last season's in like the department stores. So he would buy the leftover inventory and he'd resell it for cheaper to like small boutiques. And so I started buying bulk jeans actually with my wife now. We were dating back then. And she started doing Little Rock real successfully. And then we started selling jeans out of Tupperware where we would have these like trunk shows. And I would buy them for like $50 a pair, sell them for $100, $150 a pair. And my job was basically taking trunks to sorority houses and watching girls try jeans. So,
And then
so
that made money?
we ended up selling, we probably sold $500,000-$600,000 in jeans the last year we did it. And I had probably 20 or 30 volunteers helping us do it. So kept our payroll real low. And then what happened was finally the big brands decided to not do that anymore, but they were just going to trash the old jeans. And so it was one of those, that was probably a critical career path for me, because it was one of those things where we make a lot of money finally, like, this last couple of years. And then our supply chain got cut off. And the only option was like buy fake stuff from China or something like that. And we just were like, we just decided to shut the whole thing down. I mean, it's just not worth, losing your integrity or whatever by doing something like that. So that business went from successful to zero. So it was an interesting roller coaster that we kind of fell into. And then the first real company, like I said, like I was going to say at first, was the law school. We started that tech company where we did websites and we did custom application development back when that was needed a lot more. And then we did some like IT and systems administration. So that was a profitable company. We had about eight employees at that time.
Did you end up selling that company?
So me and the other guy actually had already started it. I kind of jumped on board, helped him get out of another partner. And it was one of those moments where I was either, we were going to be 50-50 partners, or I was about to get out of law school. And that was right when this this startup idea that I had and that we were trying to work on together kind of failed because Sears made one. It's kind of a long story, but essentially they got funded and all the venture firms didn't want to match checkbooks with Sears for kind of the same idea. And they had the infrastructure with like their repair centers and stuff like that. So we gave up, which now I've realized we probably shouldn't have. That was a good lesson. But anyways, it was at that point, I graduated law school, and I was like, I've tried to be an entrepreneur and all these failed random, moonshot type ideas. And I was like, plus drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit going to law school, you start appreciating like what it's for and what we do. And so that was kind of that moment where I was like, I'm going to shut everything down, focus. I've heard this analogy, I think at the time, that was talking about hunters and opportunity. And they're talking about, that your job isn't necessarily for the deer to walk by, like this kind of chance, it's more, you got to sharpen your blade and practice how good of a shot you are. And that way, when the opportunity does pass you, you can take advantage of it. And so that kind of resonated with me at the time. It's like, I haven't spent enough time sharpening my blade, honing my skills, learning my craft to be able to see opportunity. So I was like, I'm going to just pick this. The legal industry seems right for disruption. And so I'm going to just sharpen my blade and wait for a deer to come across.
So when you got out of law school, did you go work for somebody or is that when you started your own firm?
No. So I got out, I think I was top 5 in my class. I don't remember in law school. But when I got out, it was 2010. So it was right after the housing crash. So literally, I clerked at every top firm in the state. I think one person had a job offer, and it's because he was going to get an LLM because there's like a hiring freeze all across the country.
Wow.
And so every defense firm was shut down. And so I mean, I'm kind of glad because of course I probably would have been
Yeah.
happy with going to work for a defense firm and making 50, 60, 70 grand, whatever it is in Arkansas. But I had already built the website for every personal injury lawyer in the state. And so I was like, well, I guess I don't know what I'm going to do. So I just kind of hung my shingle. Google Places just came out, stayed up all night, built a website. And like 3 days later, if you search, I wanted to be a business lawyer. I thought that'd be interesting with my background in business, like business litigation maybe, or I wanted startup stuff. There wasn't enough in the economy here. So if you Googled like business lawyer Arkansas after that, it was like my firm that I threw up 2 days ago. And then every big firm in the state under me. And so I started getting a lot of calls, and that was kind of my entryway into legal.
And so how is that firm, when it was just Anthony Johnson, first year lawyer, to today, how's it transformed?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, I was in like a 8x8 little executive suite, with my own printer and a cell phone. So like my overhead was like $300 a month, more time than money for sure. And so it is interesting because, you learn a lot doing that though. Cause people talk about, the value of getting into the dirt, when it comes to the company. Like, I've had to set up my own phone systems and my own fax, and I've had to lick my own stamps, and I've had to, type every letter and go to walk to the courthouse. So all the little parts of doing the business of law, I've had to personally do. I mean, answer every sales call. I probably did that for 6 years. Just because it was too important not to miss one. So definitely a good learning lesson. And then now we've got a ton of people and overhead and people doing everything. So it's very different.
So you have 100 people working with you?
Well, we've got a call center, has about 75 people out of Georgia that I've got a couple partners with. And then in the law firm and the marketing company, we have about 40 some now. So yeah, a little over 100.
And those folks are in Arkansas mainly?
Arkansas and Atlanta.
Well, that's great. And so what is your, what are some habits that you have? I mean, listen, you're, what are you, 10 or 11 years out of law school?
Yes, 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's guys that are getting out of law school this year that think about this coronavirus hit. That I don't even know if they're going to have graduations for these people. I don't even know if they're going to be able to take the bar. And they're listening to this maybe, and they're looking at you and saying, I want to be Anthony Johnson. But they're scared. I mean, there's no, and I can't anticipate there's going to be a ton of job offers right there for folks. So they're kind of situated like you were 10 years ago when there was one job offer for your class. What are some of the habits that you have cultivated over the years to make you, a guy that can build a firm like that, or firms?
Yeah, it's interesting. I get asked questions a lot about what would I do or what do I recommend. I definitely had a unique background when it came to engineering, knowing how to build websites, marketing, because that was the critical piece that kind of differentiated, the unique selling proposition of our business compared to other law firms.
Right.
And that was my angle of entry. And so what I typically tell people is that what I think I've always had intuitively, and some people lack, and I think a lot of people in my time, like I said, it was a housing crisis. So nobody had jobs. A lot of people decided to do what I was doing and open their own shop, but they couldn't find clients. And so I think that's a great play. I think, of course, working your ass off, spending every moment trying to, learn and failing forward, if you will, every failure, learning from it and trying to do better. I definitely made a lot of those, kind of staying creative on cash flowing and that learning process effectively. But what I tell everyone that kind of applies, and I think what I've inherently done fairly well, is that one, you have to pick something you care about, because you're never going to work hard if you're not passionate, if you don't care about it. And so whatever the angle is, has to be something you really see the future, your future self doing. And then the second thing, and I think the thing that people miss the most, is having just a radical sense of self-awareness. I mean, it's, sure, you can bust your ass, you can do this, you can start your own firm, you can hang your shingle, but if you don't know how to get a client, you don't have a network, you don't have social skills, you don't have marketing skills, you don't have any money, I mean, you can't do it. I mean, that's why all 10 other guys that started law firms failed, at the same time I did out of my class. So it's hard to say specifically that you can do the same thing, but I think it is just, it's hard work, passion, and then self-awareness. I mean,
Yeah. So you've obviously got resilience because you failed, you know, hundreds of times, you said. So where do you get that resilience from? Is that, do you have, are you tied in to, like, for example, your ancestors, where you're from, where you came from, that type of thing? I mean, for example, I'm one of 10 kids. Okay. I grew up, my dad is a social worker, made 18 grand a year. We ran out of money halfway through the month, and there was no $5,000 when I was going to college. I mean, my parents basically, they didn't even ask where we were going to college, because I mean, I guess it was up to us and we figured it out. But it seemed like all my, you know, my siblings were like, right when they could get jobs, they got jobs, and they just basically, you know, it was work or you're not going anywhere. How about, what's your story that way? I mean, it doesn't sound like you guys were uncomfortable. I mean, you were, you know, a military brat. You had a mom that cared deeply about you. What drove you to be able to say, listen, I don't want to be just comfortable or good or great. I want to go to the next level.
Yeah, it's funny because, you know, when you say that, I think it was pretty similar. Like, you know, like I said, my dad was enlisted, so I mean, I don't even know what they make back then, 20,000 or something like that, you know. And so,
Yeah.
and then my mom was kind of just part-time. So I mean, we definitely weren't well off. I'm pretty sure my sister was in a trailer when I first started, but I just never really looked at it that way. You know, like maybe the last year of high school is when he retired from the military, and then he got a job with Cisco and like started making decent money, whatever that is. But I never really saw that. So all growing up, I was kind of like you said, like I didn't know that $5 grand was even there. I imagine he saved it all in the last year. Never told me about it, but I had the assumption that if I was going to do anything, I was on my own. And so I never looked at it that way. I never felt like we didn't have something. I never, you know, was left, you know, hungry, I guess, per se. And my parents always took care of us in that regard. But yeah, like, I mean, I remember my school allowance, like for new clothes, was like $50, and I got that for the whole year. And I always remember that moment. My mom would take me to some like her Asian friend's store with all this like really cheap stuff or fake stuff, and I'd hate it. And I'd be like, I'm going to Dillard's, I'm buying one Tommy Hilfiger shirt, and I just wear it till literally the sleeves fell off, you know, because so, and then, you know, so, and then if I wanted to do anything like laser tag, sleepover, like I'd go grab a mower and some gas, and I'd go knock on doors until I made enough to go. So I never felt like I couldn't do anything. And maybe that was just part of the personality and part of growing up without anyone ever giving you anything. But it was just expected that if I wanted to do anything, I didn't expect my parents to pay for it, and I just had to make it happen. But I also never felt like I couldn't do anything. So
yeah, you know, one of the things that I worry about is, you know, we both have done pretty well and worked hard and built our firms, and our kids haven't had the same type of struggle, you know.
yeah,
and that's, you know, I don't get asked about that very often, but you know, that's one thing I worry about, you know, in America somewhat. And we all see folks that apply to our firms and our businesses. And I'm hoping that there's still the same hunger that's in that in that next generation. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, you know, I've got 3 daughters. They're 12, 7, and 6, and so I feel the same way, because I tell them about, you know, things. You know, we all know like struggle is kind of what accelerates your character, and like what kind of person you're going to be is where you kind of find yourself and strength and all that. And they just don't have any, and so it's one of those things. Like I've kind of gotten over the fact, like I'm not going to architect struggle for them, like
Right.
intentionally. It's just
So
like,
what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
So I think the other thing that I've seen that I think I appreciate too in my past is, like, we live in the United States, which I think is just this huge bubble of kind of entitlement and wealth. And, you know, we're a first world country for sure. I remember some guy telling me he just got back from Africa, and he's like, do you realize we water our grass with drinking water? Like, thinking about that comment, like I'd never even thought about it. Like, that is drinkable water. And there are so many countries that can't even find water to drink that's clean. And so I like the idea of, I think, living abroad and being kind of from immigrant mother and having to go back to Korea and see that, like, you see other world, you know, third world countries and other areas of the world are not as lucky as we are. So I try to, like, take them on trips and stuff like that to let them see other cultures and see how we do have it really good, have some kind of appreciation of the life they're in compared to how it could be. And I'm hoping that adds some perspective.
Yeah, yeah. And so tell me how you've tackled this COVID 19 thing. We're on, I think, day 40 or something like that of lockdown in Illinois, and I don't know what's like down in Arkansas, whether you guys are in lockdown or not. But how was you, for your businesses? How have you guys coped with it?
So logistically, it was pretty easy. We spent the last year. The reason why I got pulled on to this call center and why I liked it was we were about to redo all the technology. And so we redid the entire call center to be a completely like cloud-based VoIP system. So like even the call center, we were able to tell them to take a laptop, plug into the computer, and all the calls work the same way. And then the law firm, the same thing. We were all completely cloud-based. So logistically, it was really just a go grab internet and stay home. No big deal. We've learned to kind of operate that same way to where we have accountability, we have our teams that work together and all that. So it really wasn't a change. It's really just kind of the world that's changed. And like you said, we're day 40 now. The conversation we've been having lately is we've had this adjustment. The world has changed, but the people that are sitting around waiting for their old job to come back, I was like, you're gonna be waiting for a long time, and that world's not. This isn't a temporary thing. This is just the world we live in now. Like, we don't know how long it's going to be. And so we've been telling our people, like, if your job was completely rooted in activities that we are no longer doing, you better find something to do.
Right.
It's not this, we don't have this hall pass anymore of this temporary like thing. We got to learn to live in the world and how it is now.
So
That's kind of been a shift lately.
Yeah, right. So, a lot of us, that have law firms that we rely on jury trials, for example. I don't know when, for example, in the Daly Center in Cook County, they're going to require 12 people to go into a small room and deliberate.
Yeah,
I don't know when that's going to happen.
It's illegal right now.
It's totally illegal now. But yeah. I'm saying, when is that? And so I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you seem to be a guy that can kind of, see things that are happening fairly well. What's your viewpoint on that? What do you think is going to happen with these institutions like jury trials? And I mean, think about it. For criminal cases, think about the backlog there. That's a constitutional right. In fact, yesterday or the day before, U.S. Supreme Court said you got to have 12 unanimous, even in Oregon and Louisiana, for goodness sake, to convict you. So they're not going to be able to put anybody away, and there's 12 people in there. So what are you thinking?
I'm looking forward to the first Zoom jury trial.
Interesting. I never thought about that.
Because like what I appreciate, so we have enough court interactions to where we're still staying up to date. But what I like is that without this forced behavioral change, our courts are so behind. But it's been amazing to me that even like depositions by jury and like judge meetings with judges and stuff like that, they're having now more over video. But they're, especially in federal court, they're really, really pushing to move dockets regardless. I mean, not jury trials, obviously, but a lot of the dockets are still moving forward. It's been like the MDL world and the federal court world. And so I have liked this because it's forced everyone to figure it out. And if you can imagine that we could start doing Zoom jury trials, how much more efficient that would be for both people and courts. And I think it'd be really interesting. So yeah, I know that they're getting behind. I know they're going to figure stuff out, but I guess my glass half full version of this is that without this, they probably would have never did it.
Boy, I tell you, I wonder what kind of company you'd have to be able to develop the security and familiarity to put together a Zoom jury trial and be able to govern it somehow. But I can see that happening too.
Yeah, I mean, even maybe if it's not from the comfort of your home, like it could still be 12 rooms, 12 rooms and one computer each jury. So you can go through the same security measures as you could a jury. Just still have communication via, through monitors or whatnot. I mean, I start spitballing new company ideas whenever I hear things like this. I could
You know,
probably
I
go on.
totally, I'm with you on that. Because I struggle with it because I do think that there's going to be a huge hesitancy for people to come to a jury. You know, they're going to be scared. And I agree with you. I think this is maybe a blip to a certain extent, but I think the handshake deal is over. I don't think we're going to be shaking hands anymore. I don't think there's going to, I mean, I think that this distancing is going to be, so it's going to be really put a premium on the ability to communicate like this.
No, I agree. I
I
was telling everyone, I was like, I think the biggest significant long-term change is going to be the way we behave when it comes to like work relationships. So our interaction and communication at work, like everyone thinks, oh, I got to go fly out and do a deposition because I got to look them in the face. You know, that's not true. You know, people are doing them now with video and they're like, yeah, it's just fine. You know, I can depose an expert or a doctor or whatever, and I can get across what I wanted to by video. Like it's not that important to be able to smell them or whatever you need to do when, you know, when you fly out there. And so like that appreciation and that human behavior when it comes to like how much we move around and whether it's not it's necessary, like it's been proven that it's not now. Like everyone in the world has to be equipped to work from home and do a Zoom meeting or do something like this, or else you're not a business. So that's now a precursor to operating in the world.
Right. So I wanted to just touch a few things on some inspirational things for you. So who are some folks in your life that have really made a difference in your life, inspiration wise?
Like growing up, people I knew or people I like read about?
Whoever.
Growing up, I had, you know, I think it was just a few like either teachers or whatnot that kind of saw that I hated the system and had a lot of potential, I think. And, you know, so they would actually, so teachers either hated me or they loved me. You know, it was one of those things where they either, you know, I had teachers sit my desk out in the hallway during school, like for the whole year. And then I also had, I had teachers that would let me just do whatever I wanted because they knew if they let me do that, then I would actually work harder. And so I think those teachers I really appreciated. And then I think aspirationally, you know, reading about just great startup guys, you know, like Elon and Jobs and Larry Page and Zuckerberg. You know, I kind of grew up in that era of all those things coming to life. And so, you know, I think I was very fortunate in the fact that I grew up with like I didn't have a cell phone until maybe first or second year of college, and most I could do was check the weather on it. So I grew up with no technology, and then now we have the world in our hands. And so I remember the world beforehand and started figuring out how it worked from an engineering standpoint. And so I was able to follow that growth path. Whereas even people now that are new or younger millennials, I'm like the oldest of the millennials, I think. But they have gotten into technology where I was trying to convince or talk to my 12-year-old about how Wi-Fi worked compared to cellular. And it's like conceptually like almost impossible for them to understand like Wi-Fi going through cables in the ground and cellular going through towers into outer space. You know, it's like how it actually works. It's like they're too far. I was watching something the other day. It was interesting thinking about, you know, cavemen, they lived in caves for like 5,000 years. You know, like that's how much they progressed. They were drawing buffalo on cave walls for 5,000 years. And then you think about us in the last 100 years, how much the universe has changed and what we understand. And even the last 10 years, you know, the iPhone only existed 11 years ago. So, so yeah, just the acceleration of technology right now is at an incredible rate. So it's been interesting for me. I think that's
and so where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself still hanging out in Little Rock in 5 years?
I like Little Rock. You know, I'll definitely always have a house here. I've got family here, my family, my wife's family. The world's just smaller than it used to be to me. You know, I travel a ton. Little Rock Airport's not great, but where I live doesn't really matter as much. I probably travel half the year anyways.
What's the most fun type of stuff you're doing marketing wise nowadays, Anthony?
So what I've been doing lately, it's been kind of interesting. So we finally got to the point where I'll call it like an R&D budget. So we had our core model, we had this necessity of getting clients and all that, but now we've gotten to where we spend so much that we have probably resources like a team and a budget where we can just do whatever we want. And so we've been learning a ton about, and through the group too. I mean, a ton about brand marketing, top of funnel marketing, virality. I think some of those concepts are new concepts. We now have enough data in the world where we can actually see virality happening and kind of see like what is causing it and some of the algorithms that make it happen on the different platforms. And so we've been really digging into trying to figure out how to test and track those type of metrics. It's a little harder to follow and grasp than, how many dollars for how many clicks.
And are you hiring people that are smarter than you?
I try my best to find people smarter than me.
That's great. Well, listen.
Yeah, for sure. No, we're especially on the data side, data engineering, analytics, that kind of stuff. We're starting to hire people from not just Little Rock. I think is the other thing that's really opening the doors is, with this new world, you can start hiring distributed teams, and we now with the way we've operate with it really hit once we hit about 30 people like in our core operations, like legal and marketing operations, like that was about the size where you can start getting middle management. Normally you would call the middle management, but you start getting these, like a team of teams. So rather than being one team of 8 or 10 or 15, you start having these pocket teams of 7 to 8. And so we started architecting, reorganize the whole company to be like that so that we can grow and scale. And then you get this lateral accountability rather than everything coming from top down. And so that's been hugely disruptive and good for our growth.
Yeah. And then, how'd you come up with yourattorney.com?
So I had a lot of partners when I first started, in true entrepreneurial fail fast fashion. And so of course we had the last name thing, all the last names kept changing, all the domains kept changing. I hated it. And so finally, when I could afford it, I had looked and I looked for, of course I looked like attorney.com, lawyer.com. Those were like millions of dollars are taken. And so this was like the best generic one that I thought was a consumer facing, generalization and would work for every firm. And so we also have attorneygroup.com as our marketing company, and then yourattorney.com is our law firm. And so it was one that we can always keep and be brandable. You throw on a billboard, and they see yourattorney.com, they'll remember that. They don't remember Leibowitz and Barkowski or whatever,
No, I get it.
Went with that.
I get it. Well, good. Well, listen, hey, I really appreciate you taking time to sit down with me and go through this stuff. Fascinating stuff. Only 10 years into your law career, and it looks like you're having fun. You're thinking about today, period. And that's great. And you're making a difference in a lot of people's lives. All the people that work with you. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. The more people you get, the more you have to grow from a people perspective, and you start realizing it is a human game, and that's the real equation you got to figure out. So starting to appreciate the people we work with and the culture, and gotta appreciate the ride and the journey. I think that's the hardest lesson was to learn growing up. It's not the rat race, it's the ride.
Well, great. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. It's the first time that I've heard from somebody yet that we're going to maybe have Zoom juries. So keep watching the news, guys. It could happen. And then the guy that's probably going to be running that company is going to be Anthony Johnson. So
yeah, me and Joseph are starting your new zoomjury.com. So
all right, buddy. Listen, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, you too. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to The Opening Statement with Joe Shannon. You can find us on the internet at shannonlawgroup.com or telephone our office at 312-578-9501. Have a terrific day.